Good afternoon. I am doing my Friday 5 o'clock hour early because as we get into the 4 o'clock hour today, we are coordinating and pulling all the pieces together for tomorrow's virtual memory championship. That's August 7th. We'll be logging on at 12:30 and on till 4. And we're putting the team is meeting virtually at 4 o'clock today to pull all the pieces together and making sure everybody is organized online and ready to go, so we have a smooth qualifying round of our memory championship tomorrow, utilizing Lumosity and the Memory League apps to be able to do that. So it's going to be an interesting day tomorrow, but I wanted to get my Live with Tony in on Friday, and we're getting a lot of interest in the work that Michael Dottino has been doing. It really has been an outgrowth of the Maximum Memory Mastery online course. So in that Maximum Memory M3, Maximum Memory Mastery, there's a memory for you. There's an element in that course that starts to define the elements of good mental fitness and how it helps your memory. Obviously, mental fitness and memory to me almost go together, but there are times when we really want to spell it out for people in a very clear way so that they see the connection with these 6 elements that he has done a significant amount of research on. And so he's distilled it to, if we can grab these 6 things, boy, have we done a major benefit and an issue of control over our own memories, creativity, and mental fitness. And he's getting a lot of interest on that. And unfortunately, COVID has kind of short-stopped the few that he was ready to go out and line out and get going. But here's what I want you to think about. I'm going to take you through what the 6 are, and then we're going to dive into at least one of them. But I want you to stop and think about, so what goes on with memory, right? We've got all this wiring that goes on in our brain with the cells and the dendrites and the axons. And so the nuclei of these neurons then generate these branches. So think of a root of a tree, and then you get generated. And what you're trying to figure out is, how do you properly maintain that root system? So fertilizing and watering, and is it in sun, is it out of sun? And so we're basically doing that same thing with our mental fitness. So what are the elements that water, that keep it out of the sun, in the sun? What fertilizers do we need to give it? And so what he's done is he's synthesized these 6 elements. And I'll quickly go through those with you, and then we'll do a dive. But the second thing I want to do is, when we think of memory, we have to think about, well, how are things coming into our brain? So how are we seeing, hearing, touching, talking about different things? We call that the encoding process. So how we're inputting it and helps us to encode it. And then we get into this conversation about encoding information. Is it there for short-term or long-term use? And there's a whole cycle in his online course about memory rhythms, which is in his Maximum Memory Mastery, which I think is profound in what he teaches people on review periods for learning material. So in any case, you are going to encode, and we're going to encode. Then it has to be retained, and that's how you then put what we call hooks and anchors. What can you do as you're encoding information to put hooks on it, so when it's time for recall, it facilitates itself and it just pops out. So the retaining process entails being conscious of, when you are putting in something into your brain, how are you coding it so it stays and it sticks. And that's how we go from short to long-term memory. And then, of course, the last part, well, we've learned this stuff, it's come in, we've encoded it, now we've been able to retain it for a period of time. Now, how do we use it? So now comes, okay, how do you recall it? And those are the elements that, as you look at the 6 factors that we are working on for maximum mental fitness and memory, so how do we encode? How do we then store and retain? And what does it do to facilitate the ability to recall? So let's quickly go through the 6, and I'll leave my Live with Tony audience, at least for now, to think about. So, gee, if I were to think about these 6, and I want to bounce them against encoding, retaining, and recalling, what would that look like? So the 6 are, we're going to look at mental challenges. That one clearly is an easy one to figure out in terms of how you challenge yourself to think about your encoding and your retention and your recall. We'll come back to that one. Your sleeping is, boy, a tremendous amount of research showing about what happens during our sleep and how it cleans out toxins and how we're storing information during that period of time. Our emotions, and our emotions on one level are used in a very positive way to help create the silly, funny, interesting stories as we try to remember things, or we have a fear and a stress, and so how we manage the chemical interactions of stress in our bodies impacts our brains. And so therefore, that's an interesting point that we got to be focused on. Our social interactions. How do we remember people's names and what we want to talk about with them, and how do we retain that so the next time we see them we can recall and pick up maybe a prior conversation or maybe a new one. But first thing is to remember a person's name and be able to do that. And then the 2 that have been just all over the science of late being the last year, exercise. What are we doing to bring oxygen into our brain that fires up our cells so that they're alive, as opposed to, gee, I'm sitting in a class and I'm bored and I'm slumped over and there's no oxygen going through because there was oxygen going through, but not at the level I need it to be able to retain. And there's just been so much talking about even the different types of exercises and how it impacts our brain. I was just reading one this past week on exercising and how your stomach communicates to your brain, and how exercising your stomach muscles. I mean, this stuff is just amazing in terms of what we're learning, which excites me to keep wanting to learn it. And then, of course, nutrition. What are we taking in terms of nutrition? And when you realize, right, the brain is an electrochemical process, meaning it uses electricity and chemistry, and then we have to know. So where do the ingredients for electricity and chemistry come from in our brain? Well, it's going to come from the oxygen we breathe in, exercise, and it's certainly going to come from the items we put in our mouth that eventually go through our digestive system, of which a good portion of that breakdown goes up into your brain. So we want to think about our bodies in a holistic system. It's a holistic system. From our head to our toes, you're one, you're whole, W-H-O-L-E. You're not like, well, we have holes too, but you're a W-H-O-L-E. You're a holistic being, which is where you see in the Advent Health hospital world, they're talking about whole person care. And what's important is that you have the clinical aspects of it, you have the mental aspects of it, and you have the spiritual of a human being. And so that makes up the elements of who we are. So now let's dive into at least one of these for a short spell and think about, as I was talking with Michael, I said, okay, Michael, so think about your 6 elements, and against it, the matrix of encoding, retaining, and recalling. So the easiest one for me to at least start with, and I may do one of these every week, and as opposed to doing them every other day, but mental challenges. So when I think about mental challenges, what are some of the things that people have finding, science is telling us, is great mental challenges? So anything we learn for the first time. So a New Year's resolution is learn a new topic or a new subject, find something that you've not worked on before, and begin to learn it. Now that's where when people start thinking, but when I learn it, I've never been a good student at school, or I need to take a professional exam to get a promotion, or I need to remember some critical procedures I need to follow for my job, or my policies that I need to retain to be able to communicate to people. Well, that's where you now start using something like the maximum memory to start to enhance the ability of how you encode. So in a learning mode, what you need to be thinking about is, how will I encode information so it is retained, so that when I need it, I can recall it. So how do I move it from short term to long term? And so there's a process that people can go through when you're, first of all, picking up something that is a mental challenge. the question becomes, why are you wanting to learn this? The first thing I always tell people, it's good for you. That's why you want to learn it, because it's showing you that your telomeres, your dendrites, and your axons are active, they're engaged, and your body is alive, and you're in an engaged moment of where you're continuing to learn throughout your life, which today, mental fitness can keep you stronger from Alzheimer's and dementia and things of that sort, though that science isn't 100% solid at this point. But boy, why wait for it to be solid? Because what we do know is mental challenges are a good thing for keeping your brain, like a muscle, strong. So what are you doing to create challenges? So as you're inputting information in, on the encoding side, what you need to be thinking about is, what mental skills do I need to have, memory skills, do I need to have to help me as I'm inputting information into my brain? And is there a way, as I'm inputting it into my brain, can I see it? Is there a possibility I touch it, which gives you a sense of touch? Can I verbalize it back, meaning when I'm seeing somebody for the first time and I'm listening for their name, I'm seeing them, I'm listening for them I ask them to spell their name, and I'm asking them to spell it, so I see them, I hear them, and then I speak it back to them with the spelling. So as we're learning new things, how are we inputting, and what skills and hooks are we putting on, so that when it goes into our brain and we input it through, we have focus on it, we want to retain it, and now we think about these hooks that bring us to retention. So now as I'm learning something, okay, I've thought about it, I want to retain this, so what hooks do I need to put on it? So you might put emotions on it, you might put images on it, you may be a sequencing, you may have what we use a peg system for it. So now we're putting hooks on, I call them hooks, to where they're now in your brain and they're being retained. And if you're in a study period where you want to remember for an exam 30 days out, or you want to remember for your job for the rest of your life, how do we move that then from short to long term so it becomes a part of your day-to-day behaviors? So now we got to put hooks, now we got to move to retain for long term. So there are review cycles that you want to go through. Within a day, within a week, within a month, there are certain periods of time and how you go about doing that so that it retains itself. For the third piece of this is, as life goes about you and you're observing new inputs into your brain through what you see here, and bam, it pops out with a whole bunch of new ideas. So now how does that work? Well, I'm on a call with somebody that is the organizer for a pickleball conference that we're going to be addressing, with memory and elements of brain health. And as he was talking about different elements of what his interests were, it just continued to spur me back to a memory competition and something that happened, or a TV appearance and something that happened. So my brain had locked those things in, so as he was talking to me, I was able to come back to several, I call them hooks. And what I did is I just had some keyword notes written down. I didn't do a mind map on it, I just had some keyword notes. And the keyword notes triggered me to come back to certain topics that I was then able to engage in a really vibrant, exciting, enthusiastic conversation. So there's one of the things when we're thinking of mental challenges. So how are we, first of all, do we want to remember this? And so mental challenges and how we go about dancing, for example. Wow. Ballroom dancing, fantastic. In fact, any dancing where you have to learn the steps, you get your body movements engaged in it, you're listening to music, you're talking to your partner, all of those are using senses and a great way of encoding. Now, the good or the bad is there are sometimes when you get into a rhythm of a song that even when you leave, it's in there. Now you've connected all your senses to it, and now you've got this song going through, and you're trying to go to bed at night, and there's this song playing in your head that you just have to figure out, how do I get this out of my head so I can go back to sleep, or get to sleep in many cases. But when you get that excited and enthused about something that you've learned, you want to remember it. So now you go to sleep, and your brain starts to purify its toxins, and it starts to bring that priority. I want to remember this. It brings it into a stronger focus in terms of your memory. And then, of course, as you get up in the morning, you might want to do a quick review of it and say, hey, what was it that we did last night that really stuck in my mind, that really made a difference? And there's where you get your recall. So that is my segment for Friday. Again, tomorrow is our August 7th Virtual Memory Championship, where we have a little bit over 100 people that'll be competing for 12 spots in our on-site national competition we're doing here in Orlando, Florida on October 23rd. So stay tuned with the USA Memory Championship website and .com website, excuse me, and you'll stay up to date with who won. God, I got thoughts going on. Focus. Who won the events? Who are the finalists that are going to be moving on to October 23rd? And it's all exciting. And despite the pandemic and the COVID and what restrictions are, we're using the creative genius that we all have. We all have this. We're finding the pathways of how to make these things happen. And that's the exciting part. I've got a team of people who realize we have an unlimited potential of what we're able to do if we just figure out and know how to use it. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back on Monday, and I'll probably be sharing some of the highlights from our competition tomorrow. I'm sure there will be many. There always are. As I've said to people on the team, we've done this for 22 years, and I can assure you something new will always happen. Some new challenges will always pop up, but we've got to use what's up here to figure out how to make it a spectacular event, and we have been able to do that for 22 years. I've got a fabulous team of people that stick around and pay attention. Anybody wants to reach me on this for tomorrow, it's ADOTTINO, that's ADOTTINO at AOL.com. I'm planning to have my afternoon dedicated to getting ready for tomorrow afternoon, so have a good afternoon, have a great weekend, and we'll see you again here on Monday.